are the Seahawks the best team in the best division? Will Pete Carroll finally let Russ cook for the duration of an entire season? Will the return of fans in the stands be enough to make Seattle a tough place to play again and maybe help squeeze out an extra win or two? Let's get into it all. Let's hit the opening bell and preview the Seattle Seahawks.
Welcome, Kings, to this edition of the Not Your Daddy's Sports Betting Podcast and live stream presented by SportfolioKings, the future of plus EV sports betting research where we leverage fundamental handicapping, data science, and Wall Street-style portfolio management principles to help make you a sharper, more informed bettor.
Yes, it's preseason 2021. We're diving into all 32 teams over the course of the summer, evaluating market expectations, providing you with our preliminary analyses and predictions as we head into mid-September and go into week one. So let's talk some Seahawks football. Let's set the stage, look back to 2020. Vegas estimated wins.
Let Russ Cook.
Is he? Going into 2020, Vegas estimated wins 9.5. The record 12-4 outperform expectations quite decisively. ATS record 8-8. So underperformed the straight up record there rather convincingly. Average margin of victory almost a touchdown, around 6 points. So when they won rather decisively. Average cover, barely a point, which is kind of indicative of that 8-8 overall ATS record. Realized strength of schedule 20th. So it was not too tough of a schedule despite playing in one of the toughest divisions. So let's look back on the Seattle Seahawks from a week by week basis in 2020. Not too much signal in this one. I think what you were mentioning prior to recording, Zach, makes a lot of sense. Basically, the Seahawks started the season pretty hot. Pete Carroll did let Russ cook. And the market was hesitant to buy in to that narrative, kind of thinking that it wasn't going to last. They were right, but they abandoned that thesis come mid-season, exactly when that script kind of flipped. Started to buy into the Seahawks mid-season, and that's when it was much choppier waters from an ATS perspective. So Seahawks started the season off 4-0 ATS, kind of blazing hot. Seahawks looked like one of the best offenses in the NFL, really just letting Pete Carroll letting this offense, just really rip, letting Russ throw the ball deep downfield, putting up 30, 40 points a game. It was a lot of fun to watch, kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. But then good old Pete Carroll, was not happy through. Again, there was a little bit of bumpy waters there where maybe the Seahawks offense didn't perform as it did in the first few weeks of the season. And I'm thinking the Rams Seahawks game kind of middle of the season was kind of a defining moment when, they were able to only put up 13 points through halftime, ended up only scoring 16 points for the game, losing to the Rams. And it was then that, Pete Carroll kind of abandoned the Let Russ Cook playbook and then started to run much more heavily moving forward, which is when they did not perform as well as they did, especially ATS, because then the market kind of got ahead of itself, started pricing in an offense that was going to be scoring a lot of points on a regular basis. And that's when, they actually reverted and stopped doing that. And so we can see here pretty much anytime the market, kind of really started to buy into the Seahawks, they were kind of let down. So we can kind of see there week 7, week 9, week 10, week 15, week 5, all weeks for over 20% support and kind of were let down, especially when you look at over the second half of the season. There was only 2 weeks, week 8 and week 12 were the only weeks when the market kind of bought into the Seahawks and Seahawks bettors were rewarded. So if you didn't capitalize on the Seahawks in the beginning of the season,
you lost money.
You're most likely treading water over the latter half of the year. Yeah. What else some of your kind of key takeaways from the Seahawks in 2020, Zach?
Yeah, I think that Pete Carroll solidified himself as not a great head coach, in that one of the worst 12-4 teams down the stretch, I think, from memory's sake, that I think we've seen. And it's just like everything fell apart. And the defense wasn't good all season. But then actually, it was almost like the defense was getting better towards the end of the season, and the offense became completely irrelevant. Remember the first 4 weeks, and then remember the last 3 weeks. It was almost like 2 different teams, like completely. Yep. And it's just baffling how a coach can let that happen, because you should, in theory, be improving. Take the Sean Paytons and Bill Belichick's of the world. Typically, their teams struggle when they have good teams. Struggle the first 2 to 4 weeks, and then as the season progresses, they right the ship. They get everyone on the same page, and that's who they are come playoff time, and they get to championship games and Super Bowls. Pete Carroll, I don't know. I don't know how you let that happen. Yeah. So just in general, I think this is do you trust Pete Carroll to not be Pete Carroll next year?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, it's not a question we've had to ask ourselves too often in the past, but it's, can you trust Russell Wilson? So he had always been a quarterback in the past that you can kind of rely on. He's not going to be the reason why, you lose the game, especially if it's close, or like if there's a 2-minute drill, it's like you want to be on the Russell Wilson side to kind of lead the team down the field for the game-winning score. And there were multiple games last year where I feel like there was cracks in the trustworthiness of supporting Russell Wilson, where he had 2-3 interception games, throwing pick sixes, throwing interceptions in the red zone. These are not things that he did.
No, for years.
Now, maybe it has to do with the playbook, or trying to force the issue, or, I don't know, trying to make a statement of, he's just trying to do too much because he wasn't being given the same opportunities as he was early on in the season.
I think real quick,
I don't know what was going on there, but there was multiple things we saw from Russell Wilson from a negative perspective that we did not see before.
Well, and I think you just hit it. I think you hit it as far as what I would conclude is, I think it might have been in part because of the rebellious nature of what happened last year. Because you got to remember, they started the season, Russ was amped, offense was amped. We're going to go after it. We're going to be explosive. We're going to throw downfield. We're going to build leads early, and we're going to score 30 points a game. And that's what they went out, and that's what they did. Then Pete Carroll pulled the reins back. Well, you've already unleashed the beast. You've all like Russ is already like, well, I can do it. Like, why? What do you mean? No, I'm not going to let you stop me. I'm gonna force the issue. I'm going to push the envelope. And maybe that's where some of those errors in judgment started to rear their head, is he's basically trying to squeeze in his authority as QB over the coaching staff who wanted to pull the reins back. And so I think it all comes down to the synergies of 2021. Do we get a repeat? Is it better or is it worse? Is where the pulse I think we have to find before the market does.
Mm-hmm. And we go to the next slide and just look at some of the stats from 2020. there's also some concerns around. So the Seahawks offensive line has kind of always been a question mark, a liability, something that, Russell Wilson's athleticism and agility has usually, helped mitigate against. He's kind of, his overall ability to move around in the pocket has helped make the offensive line probably look better than it is, or like less bad than it actually is. Whereas, can you imagine if that offensive line had a more stagnant, statue-like quarterback? I mean, I think, Russell Wilson allows them to not invest in their offensive line, which they didn't this offseason either.
Well, and look at the sack percentage. I mean, 29th in the NFL. Still with Russell Wilson. That's like to your point. It's just like no wonder why he's not happy.
Yep. And also third down conversion. 27th in the NFL. So usually third downs, again, when the team, defense might bring blitzes or otherwise put more pressure on the quarterback. This is your last chance to move the sticks. And so when the offensive line, is going to be under the most pressure and they fail.
Yeah.
So some worrying signs there. 7th in points, 28.2. A lot of that probably heavily weighted towards the front half of the season. Defensively, middle of the road, points 16th, red zone scoring percentage 17th, pass completion percentage 19th, takeaways 19th, sacks 12th. So I mean, it wasn't bad. It was very average-ish, and it got better, to your point, over the course of the second half of the season.
Yeah, it improved over the course. I think going to the next slide of seeing their adds and additions is kind of going to tell us more, which I don't think they did a whole lot. I mean, they did some things.
No,
but
they didn't.
They had Gerald Everett as tight end. I think that could be a little bit of a bump for the offense. But besides that, I mean, it's really going to come down to the Shane Waldron offensive coordinator addition. I believe he was passing game coordinator for the Rams, if memory serves. So I think if that plays out and Russell Wilson's let him cook favor, that'll benefit the offense. But the defense, I mean, didn't really do much except get older. I feel like they lost, their average corners. Shaq Griffin, Quentin Dunbar. I just
KJ Wright.
Oh, he's gone. I don't remember. So I don't know. I just don't see this defense being much better than they were last year. So you have another average defense. But I mean, like we said, they win 9 games a year. So you got to pencil in Russ to, when the market's flat on them, probably a good time to consider them. I think I had a rule before last year that like if Russ was getting more than +3, it's almost an auto bet because of his ability to come back late in games. But like you said, did we see cracks in the armor last year? Or was that actually just a product of kind of like an Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy type problem that maybe remedies itself, or the new coach remedies that problem? So just something to keep an eye out in the offseason, I think.
Yeah, and I don't really know if it matters who the OC is, because last year Schottenheimer wasn't the reason why the offense struggled in the second half of the season. In fact, he may have been the reason why it excelled in the first half of the season. And then it's when Pete Carroll, wanted to start to dominate and reassert his old school football philosophy, into a game script perspective. That is when this started to dramatically underperform. And by adding a new OC is not going to change that from possibly happening. The main off-season take is nothing on the screen. It has nothing to do with who they added or who they lost. It has to do with the whole kerfuffle that Russell Wilson made in the beginning of the offseason, when there was a lot of rumors around him asking for a trade, kind of like pulling an Aaron Rodgers. And as we know, that eventually resolved itself. And so you have to ask yourself, well, how and why did that resolve itself? Was there some sort of, again, backdoor commitment, agreement with Russell Wilson, who's been vocal about wanting to be used more as a Aaron Rodgers type quarterback, a Patrick Mahomes type quarterback, something that he's already demonstrated that he can be, and to not take the football out of his hands in the second half of the season and in the key moments of the game. And that was obviously the reason why he wanted out, or reportedly wanted out of Seattle, was because he doesn't want to be in that position anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be a top 5 QB who's treated like a bottom 15 QB.
Yes.
You know, like, no.
Yeah. And so there are some backdoor agreements made. There has to have been. So only reason why some of that turmoil and pressure, was released. And so is there a commitment now from Pete Carroll and this coaching staff that we're going to put the ball in your hands, Russ? We're going to let you cook. And this is the year for sure. Like, we're going to keep going with it. We're not just going to do it for the first half of the season, run to a few speed bumps, then be like, hey, it wasn't a good idea, and let's go back to running the ball. That we're not going to do that this year. This is going to be a full year of letting Russ cook. What do you think?
I think that's the plus EV decision for the team. Is you might as well, like, that's the pathway to getting to the playoffs and a potential Super Bowl run. Not letting Russ cook is, okay, you're a 10-win team that maybe makes the playoffs and loses in the first round. So it's Pete Carroll.
Sure. And we're not in the business of saying what they should do, but what are they going to do? That's how you make money in this business.
Yeah, well, I think
there's way too many sports enthusiasts, academics, the PFFs of the world trying to say, well, this is what this team should do, and this is a really great way, like as if they're on the coaching staff helping dictate the next moves from the team. You're not. It doesn't matter. Who cares what they should do? I don't care what they should do. I want to know, what are they going to do? Well, tell me what you think they're going to do, because that's how you make money.
Yes. Well, that's something I think anybody needs to determine based on the rest of this preseason, is determine, are those synergies going to be cleared up and Russ is going to be handed the reins? And that's the tell. That's the signal. Is I don't have that yet, but hopefully before the season starts, we will have that.
Well, you're not going to get that from the preseason. What's your prediction?
But I think from conversations inside the locker room and picking up on talks and game plans.
I don't know. I don't think you're going to get any signal there, because I think you're going to for sure see it in the beginning of the season, just like you did last year. And the question is it going to be sustainable? Is Pete Carroll going to say they did make a backdoor agreement? Does he have the deportment to maintain that agreement and not buckle under his own ego and think that, again, it's all about when you hit those moments of adversity in the season. Is that going to be a sufficient catalyst for then Pete Carroll to revert back to him thinking that actually he knows best? Is that going to happen? Tell us that.
I don't have the answer today. Give me some time. Let me sulk in it. My hot take is Pete Carroll is an old dog. Old dogs don't learn new tricks. So there's going to be some highlights of Let Russ Cook, but it'll probably end up being more of the same and stretches. So
Yeah, I mean, they can't rely on the defense. That's for sure. So it's going to have to be a team that, again, is going to have to put up a sufficient amount of points to.
And if I'm the Seahawks real quick, and we can touch on the schedule, is why, like, I understand Pete Carroll got you a Super Bowl and you've had a good team for now, I guess, a decade almost. But it's time to move on. Like, it's okay to let Pete Carroll go. He's old.
For sure.
And institute a new coaching regime that's going to benefit Russell's skill set. Like, just do it. So maybe this season is the final, like, you lost in the divisional round of the playoffs again. Like, let's pick a side. It's either Pete or it's Russell. Well, we know.
And actually, I'm surprised as we go and we move on to the next slide, looking at the 2021 schedule. Vegas estimated wins 9.5, so a full game less than the Rams. Estimated strength of schedule 16th. Super Bowl odds plus 2,500. Playoffs, yes, no, minus 120, plus 100. So barely leaning to the yes. Of course, tough division, no doubt. But 9.5 wins. I mean, again, Russ has done that his whole career. I feel like I want to lean over on this. When we look at the schedule, Colts week 1, great spot.
Yeah.
Titans week 2, I'm a little bit bearish on the Titans.
Bad defense.
Then you got a little bit of a tough road. You know, Vikings, Niners, Rams. That's a little bit of a tough spot there. And then you got Steelers, Saints, Jags going to the bye. I think that's 3 winnable games right there. Again, I'm bearish on the Saints. I don't know how I feel about Pittsburgh really yet.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be great. Then you come out of the bye. You got Packers, Cards, Washington, Niners.
Tough stretch.
That's a tough stretch. Then you got Texans, Rams, Bears, Lions. Close the season versus the Cardinals.
Oh, it's a little bit of a tougher schedule than I think the estimated strength of schedule thinks it is. I mean, I think it's dependent on a couple teams how good or not they are this season, but yeah.
So can you find 10 wins?
Yeah, I mean, they're only favored in what, 9 of these? So they're not even favored in 10 games. Like I said, it's a tough schedule. It's not easy. So they're not getting to 12 wins again. It's going to be a 10 win.
So they're favored in 10, but short favorites versus Rams,
49ers,
Niners, Cards,
division games.
But again, also playing probably some of the 3 worst teams in the NFL.
There's also
Lions, Texans, Jags.
Yeah, those are 3 wins.
And again, I think the Saints are not going to be good. So,
I mean, Sean Payton's a decent coach, though. He can squeeze.
I think the Saints are going to be like the Patriots of last year. Bill Belichick's one of the greatest coaches.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, that's 8. I mean, what, 8 wins? They're not going to be 12 wins, probably, but a 7-8 win team is likely.
Perhaps.
So what I'm saying is just.
But I don't see it with Jameis Winston.
I don't see it with Taysom Hill, so it looks like we might be bearish on the Saints.
There you go. I am bearish on the Saints.
Yeah, and I think the bigger picture, you know, if the Seahawks are going to like run this schedule and get into the playoffs, it's going to be on Russell Wilson's back. I'm not necessarily against a Super Bowl run here if it's a let Russell become MVP Cook season.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. Actually, the Russ MVP, if you remember, again, through the first 5-6 weeks of last year, it was like slam dunk that Russell Wilson's going to be the MVP.
Yeah.
And then that evaporated.
Yeah. Who even won it? I don't remember now.
Rodgers.
Oh, yeah. Rodgers MVP tour. That's right. Revenge tour. Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think the Seahawks.
I see definitely 10 wins here, though. Again, assuming health, etc., of course. And then if they unleash Russ,
11, 12.
Definitely over 10. Because you got Colts. I'm not high on the Niners per se. So you got Colts. I could see sweep of the Niners. That's 3. 1 beat of the Rams. 4. Saints, Jags. 6. 1 beat of the Cardinals. 7. Texans, Lions. Now you're what, at 9? And then all you got to do is maybe beat the Bears in Seattle. Maybe beat Pittsburgh. Maybe beat the Titans.
Yeah, they can beat those teams.
Maybe sweep the Cards. I don't think they're going to sweep the Cards. They always struggle versus
they struggle.
I see 10, 11 wins.
Well, and like you said, predicting that this goes under 9 or 9.5, is an outlier with Russ Wilson as QB.
That's true.
There's no point even doing it. Like, it's either an over.
No, you basically have to be leaning in the direction of there's going to be injuries.
Yeah. Which you can't predict. And that's So the play's over.
No, I don't like overs. You and I, we did some research as well and basically showed that the futures market prices in like 8, 9 wins that are impossible to even achieve when you aggregate all the estimated wins. So the bias is clearly to the over, so much so that it's an impossible feat mathematically. So you want to find reasons to lean under.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think we do a pretty good job of doing that.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But 9.5 for the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's low enough to go over if you want to bet it, I think.
Yeah. Especially again because I'm maybe not as high on the Niners and Cards as the market is. That gives me an extra cushion. And also, I'm not as high on the Saints as the market is. Another level of extra cushion. That I think that this team is mispriced.
Yeah, good point. That's fair. Anything else to wrap up on Seahawks or?
No, I think that pretty much closes this episode. So thanks everyone for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the Sportfolio Kings platform at sportfoliokings.com. We're going to have a whole host of Plus EV content being released this fall, including our in-house managed sportfolios, which will be providing free to all our subscribers all season long. So like we said, this ain't your daddy's sports betting. So let's get you out there, get prepped to take your bookie to the woodshed.
And of course, ping me.